The candidate forum for the Illinois House Representative, District 42. My name is Barbara Young. I'm with the League of Women Voters of the LaGrange area, and I will be your moderator this evening. I would like to begin the forum by reviewing some of the ground rules for candidate forums. These are printed in your program, but I want to emphasize a few points before we get started tonight. Each candidate participating tonight has signed and returned the candidate ground rules. These rules specify the format, time limits, and other rules related to the conduct of the forum. I will be responsible for enforcing these rules. The candidates will begin with an opening statement, which they'll give in alphabetical order, and thereafter we will alternate with questions. Questions submitted prior to the candidate forum were reviewed by a panel of experienced and newer League of Women Voter of Glen Ellyn members for appropriateness to the elected position, to avoid duplication, and to be unbiased. We ask the audience tonight to write your questions legibly on the index cards, which volunteers will collect from you. And if the volunteers who will be collecting cards raise their hand, great, thank you. We have asked the candidates, and we also ask the audience, to keep all campaign materials outside of this room. We have asked the candidates to agree they will not use any voice, image, video, or other recording of the forum in their campaign as advertisement. The full recording of the forum will be available on the League of Women Voters of Glen Ellyn website. And the candidates may contact the League for permission to post the candidate forum in its entirety or post the link to the League's website. We request that the audience refrain from taking photos or videos. It's a distraction during the event to other members of the audience and to the two candidates. This is more conducive to a free exchange of ideas, and we respectfully request that you listen and give your full attention to both candidates. We're grateful to the candidates who are not only willing to serve in office, but who agreed to come here tonight for voter education. Please show these candidates your appreciation and respect. I'm going to ask that you refrain from clapping, cheering, booing, applauding, or otherwise vocalizing agreement or disagreement with any question or answer. I will respond as necessary to remind everyone of this expectation. We are, as I said, recording tonight's forum in its entirety, and I will encourage those of you who are here in person to let your neighbors know that they can also watch this video from the website. Okay, so now we're ready to begin with opening statements. We're going to begin with candidate Costa Howard. You have 2 minutes for your opening.
You want to hold and just pass the mic back and forth? Okay. It's probably easier for us.
Is this okay?
Sounds good.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you all for being here and participating in democracy, listening to candidates and being a part of a discussion. My name is Terra Costa Howard, and I am the state representative for the 48th district, soon to be the 42nd. My bio is in the candidate program, so I'll kind of skip ahead. I want to talk about the honor that it's been for the last 4 years to serve this district. When I was elected to office, I was asked to do 3 things. 1, protect choice, which I've done by supporting the Reproductive Health Act. 2, I was asked to make sure that we get our fiscal house in order. Now, it's not perfect, I'll acknowledge that. But what we have done is had 4 years of a balanced budget. We've had 6 credit upgrades here in Illinois. We have no backlog of bills, and we have $1 billion in the rainy day fund that when I got there in 2019 had maybe $700,000. And that was after 736 days without a budget. And probably the most prominent thing that we've also done is that we have new leadership in the House. I was the first person to come out against Speaker Mike, and I look forward to the questions.
And now we'll turn to candidate Hood for her 2-minute opening.
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and for everybody for coming out on a rainy day. and being here tonight. I appreciate you all being here. I'm Stefanie Hood. I'm running to be your next state representative. I am the daughter and great-granddaughter of Cuban and Mexican immigrants, and my family has always stressed the importance of a strong education and hard work. And as a result, I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I graduated from the University of Illinois with a degree in economics. I went on to study international economics at Bocconi University in Milan, Italy, and went on to law school at the University of Illinois in Chicago. I'm now practicing law in the areas of data privacy, healthcare, and regulatory compliance. I'm deeply committed to this community and am passionate about uplifting everyone, especially our most vulnerable in our society, empowering them to be productive members. I'm a board member of NAMI Dupage, the 708 Community Mental Health Board, and a commissioner for the Dupage Housing Authority. Most importantly, though, I am a mom. I've got a 5- and a 7-year-old at home that I love with all my heart. And I've lived in Illinois my entire life. I love our community here in Glen Ellyn. Glen Ellyn is a community where people truly care and look out for each other. However, I'm concerned about the future of our state as we see friends and family move to other states for a lower cost of living, more freedoms, more opportunity, and I'm getting 30 seconds. Okay, businesses are leaving and signaling to other companies that Illinois is not a good place to do business. We just want a safe, affordable place to live freely, and politics have become so divided that a majority of people feel like they're not being heard. People are frustrated and feel like they're helpless as their leaders are not doing anything to fix their problems. And the solutions are quite simple. As state representative, I want to represent our shared values and support policies that make Illinois a state where families and businesses can prosper. And I'm out of time. So.
Okay. Now we're going to move into the question and answer segment. And I'm reminding the candidates that they have 2 minutes to answer the questions. And the first one, which will begin with candidate Hood, is what personal or professional achievements or experiences do you feel make you uniquely qualified for this position?
So I have a degree in economics. I believe that will apply to my desire to make Illinois a fiscally responsible state. I've got a law degree. I can use my law degree and understand and apply the law. I was a criminal defense attorney for some years, and now data privacy. So I've covered many areas of law and understand and how to apply those. I also, I'm a mother, so I care about our education, our communities, and I deeply care about this community and the community efforts that I put forth through the 708 Community Mental Health Board and NAMI Dupage, and as a commissioner for Dupage Housing Authority, I truly understand the needs of our community. So I think there's, my background would be well served in state legislature. I can bring my experiences to better our communities and better our state.
Okay. Candidate Howard, same question.
Thank you. So personally, again, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm a mom. I have 3 amazing young women as my daughters, and I also own a local small business. I served for 8 years on the District 41 School Board, 2 years as board president, 4 years as board secretary. I also served on the Glen Ellyn Village Plan Commission. I've been a catechist at St. James. I've been a Girl Scout leader. I've been a PTA member. In other words, I've been a very active member of this community since I moved here in 1997. Professionally, I too am an attorney, and I've actually practiced here in DuPage County for the past 26 years. First, I was a staff member at for the 18th Judicial Court, the DuPage County Judges, and then I moved into the DuPage County Public Defender's Office, where I continue to practice law as a juvenile attorney, representing children and families in crisis, as well as kids in delinquency, abuse, neglect, guardianship, adoption. After my 3rd daughter was born, I moved into private practice, and I have a solo practice where, again, I specialize in focusing on families who are in crisis, representing the elderly and representing disabled adults. I've been an adjunct professor at College of DuPage in the Paralegal Studies Department. So when you look at both my personal and professional background, these are things that I've been actively involved in since I moved here. not things that I was just appointed to, but I've lived in Dupage County basically my whole life. I've lived in this community for 26 years, and I understand, based on these experiences, the diverse perspectives that are needed to represent Glen Ellyn, Lombard, Downers Grove, Lisle, Wheaton, and currently Oak Grove Terrace, but not in the new district. Diverse perspectives are exactly what we need.
Okay, now we're going to move into some questions about education, and I'm going to begin with candidate Howard. What role do you believe the state has in making higher education more affordable in Illinois?
Sorry, lawyers, we take lots of notes. Want to make sure we answer the questions. So in terms of higher ed, for the past 4 years, I have had the opportunity to make sure that I'm voting yes for a balanced budget. Those are things that we here in Illinois have done to make sure that we have increased our math grants, so that we have students who are in our most underrepresented communities, students in need, who can actually afford to go to school. We have expanded that program, and that's really important because we want to make sure that we lift everyone's boats. We want to make sure that students have opportunities, not just to go to college though. We have to remember that we have students who actually want to maybe go into trades, or they want to go into something different that is not the traditional path of college. I'd also like to point out that I am the proud representative of the College of Dupage. I would say one of the finest institutions in this nation when it comes to community colleges and what it can actually offer our students. That means workforce development programs, that means trades, that means things like certifications in our healthcare industry, teachers' aides. These are the types of things that we do here in this district that we are proud to serve, and the state of Illinois needs to support that financially. We need to also support that we make sure that we pass legislation that will improve the lives of all of our students and give them the opportunities that they need.
Okay, candidate Hood, how do we keep higher education affordable?
Well, this is a very important topic. As the first person in my family to graduate from college, I was a recipient of a MAP grant and some scholarships, so I understand the importance of MAP grants and fully support that in giving access to higher education. College is really out of reach for a lot of students because of the cost of education, and students are increasingly not seeing the return on their investment when they leave school with tons of loans that are unmanageable and not the proper job or income to pay for those loans. And so, it's definitely a serious issue that we need to address. A lot of the state funding has increasingly gone towards pensions. 15 years ago, state funding was at 9% paid towards pensions. Now we're closer to 50% of the funding going towards pensions. And that's a real problem because what's happening now is students are burdened with more of the cost. And so I agree, we do need to put more state funding towards education, but we also have to solve our pension problem here in Illinois so we can have those resources allocated efficiently.
Okay, and sticking with candidate Hood, does the state have a responsibility for a pre-K through 12th grade education? And if so, what is that responsibility?
Does the state have a responsibility as in public schools?
Pre-K through 12th
Yes,
grade education?
absolutely. I think the government, one of the tenets of government is to provide education, public safety, and infrastructure. Those are the tenets of government, and so yes, absolutely, they need to provide education.
Okay. Candidate Howard? Same question.
Sure, absolutely. And as you all know, I am a public school advocate. I am unabashedly pro-public schools. We have some of the best schools in the state of Illinois right here in Dupage County. I'm proud of that, really proud of that, and I'm proud that I got to serve on a board for 8 years that promoted public education and lifting, like I said, lifting everyone's boats and addressing the needs of every student in our school, regardless of what neighborhood that they live in. I'd also like to point out that I currently serve on the K-12 Appropriations Committee, and so it's my responsibility when we are looking at that budget to make sure that every line item is accounted for, to ask the tough questions of programs that maybe are not as effective in some communities, and how we can reallocate those dollars to help the communities that need them. What we also see is that our responsibility as a public school state is to make sure that the dollars are actually going to public schools, not private school tax dollars going to private schools, that we are funding our public schools, and that every district has the resources that they need to meet the needs of each and every student that they serve.
Okay, and staying with candidate Howard, I'm going to move to another topic, gun violence. What can be done on the state level to reduce gun violence?
Gun violence affects everyone's lives. Whether you live in a neighborhood where there are gunshots, or we turn on the news in the morning, or frankly, we go to step off to a parade and are not comfortable because there's snipers on the tops of our buildings. When the state of Illinois went 736 days without a budget under the prior administration, all those violence protection, those prevention programs were cut. The dollars weren't there. So what we're seeing is the need to reinvest those dollars and make sure that that's happening. I am a proud chief co-sponsor of banning assault weapons here in Illinois. Military assault weapons, high-capacity magazines do not belong on our streets. If you can have a gun, you legally can have a gun, you have your FOID card, that's one thing. But we do not need weapons of war on our streets. That is a big piece of this. We need to make sure that we are educating people about safe storage. We did pass that bill, and again, we have a public service campaign making sure that guns are locked up. I'm proud to be endorsed by GPAC, Gun Violence Prevention, Giffords Group, and Moms Demand Action, because we moms know weapons of war don't belong on our streets. We want kids to be safe, and we want all children to be safe in their neighborhoods. So we need to make sure we as a state are making those investments in those violence protection programs in our neighborhoods.
Okay, candidate Hood, how can we reduce gun violence? Your thoughts?
As a mother, I want to make sure our children are safe in our communities and our families are safe in our neighborhoods. And, the question is generally gun violence. And so I want to address that because I think it's a multi-layer issue, and there's really no one solution. It's going to take a lot of things to prevent gun violence. And our first priority should be getting guns out of the hands of dangerous people. And Illinois has the most restrictive gun laws in the country. And the problem is we don't have enough law enforcement or manpower to enforce the laws that we already have on the books. For example, there's 20,000 revoked FOID cards out, and 1,800 of those people have been identified as clear and present danger, but we don't have the law enforcement to go and take those cards and remove the guns from these revoked FOID card holders. So we need to support our law enforcement to make sure they have the resources to enforce these laws that are already on the books. I agree, I don't think civilians should have military-grade weapons, but we really need to focus on prevention. I hosted an event for cybersecurity with with Detective Richard Wistocki, and what he talked about was prevention in schools in terms of mass shootings. And 75% of the students that do these mass shootings will post their intentions on social media before they do that. And so he does a training with SROs, school resource officers, and law enforcement on how to respond to these social media texts. Last year, he was able to prevent 5 school shootings. This year, he's prevented two incidents of acts of violence within schools. So prevention is key. As a community, we need to be aware and understand that these red flag laws exist. And so if we see something, we need to say something. And I have a lot more I could talk about this topic, but I'm out of time.
Okay. Sticking with candidate Hood, We're going to talk about election results. Do you believe the 2020 election results were valid, and what led you to that conclusion?
Yes. President Biden, Sir President.
Okay.
I just think that's a divisive question, but yes, he is our president, and I think that, well, sorry. The election results are valid, absolutely.
So President Biden is the president, and I came to that conclusion because not a single case that was filed anywhere in any state found voter fraud. So it's not a divisive question, it's the truth. And President Biden is the president.
Okay, sticking with candidate Howard, question on COVID. Do you think the state of Illinois should be involved in COVID policy and protocol?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. I guess,
I didn't write it, but I think the question would be versus local communities.
yes, I do believe the state, the governor has the authority through executive order to keep our state safe and to make decisions on behalf of the people of the state of Illinois. What we find is when it's piecemeal, it doesn't work. We have to have a constructive, collective policy that impacts everybody across the state of Illinois. I think that, I believe that the governor kept people alive and safe, and our hospitals were at full capacity. We had a lot of difficulties getting personal protection gear into our neighborhoods, into our hospitals. We know that. I was on those calls. I think that there are, at times though, yes, it was a very divisive thing, but if you have one local person, one village doing one thing and another village doing another, the same thing with the counties, you have no consistency. You have no consistent policy across the state. And I guess my question is, are we gonna have people along the borders of our towns checking to see where you come from, where you live? No, we want people to have consistent care across the state of Illinois, and we need to make sure that our policies are consistent regardless of your zip code, because at the end of the day, it's about people, keeping people safe across the state of Illinois.
Okay, Candidate Hood, your thoughts on the COVID policy?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Do you think the state should be involved in COVID policy and protocol?
Well, what we saw with President Pritzker, which I think we're on our, 34th executive state of emergency, he definitely took unilateral control. He did not involve the legislature in any of his decisions. He didn't involve any expert opinion, and he, put these COVID mandates across the state. And we are a very diverse state, and we have different types of communities. And I think in the beginning, when we didn't know what was going on, we had to take all precautions. However, as time went on and we had other states to look at, I think local control would have been the right way of handling that. And so, I think we should make decisions locally and how it affects our communities. And that's not what was done. And so, I don't understand why we're still in a state of emergency, but I'll leave that for the governor's debate.
Okay, staying with Candidate Hood, I have a couple questions on reproductive health. Do you support the Illinois Reproductive Health Act establishing laws and policies that protect personal autonomy to make decisions about health and safety of one's own body? Why not?
Yeah, I believe a woman should make her own medical decisions. I think the Reproductive Act or the reproductive abortion rights in Illinois are the most permissive in the country and really in the world. And allowing abortions up to the minute of birth and even partial abortions, I think, at least the pro-choice women that I talk to believe that that's extreme. Another thing that people don't agree with that I've spoken to at the doors is the bill that I think Terra Costa Howard sponsored, which was the repeal of parental notice for minors seeking abortion. And I think as a parent, we want to guide the health and safety of our children. And, I don't agree with that. But overall, women should definitely make their own medical decisions.
Okay, Candidate Howard, same question.
I am 100% pro-choice. I believe women should be making their reproductive health decisions between themselves and their doctor, not from the government. I'm proud that I supported the Reproductive Health Act. I absolutely believe in a woman's right. It's not a medical decision. It is absolutely 100% pro-choice. This is a pro-choice district. I want to be very clear, when women are making decisions, this fallacy of the moment of birth is, again, a fallacy in and of itself. These are women that I think people should have a little bit more empathy for. These are women who potentially almost died on the table. I know from my own personal experience what that's like. So when that happens, that's a person who expected to come home with a baby. So I have a lot more sympathy for what that is, and that's not extreme, that's real. And so I think people need to think about what that really means. This is bigger than just about a procedure. This is about IVF, how we define what reproductive health care looks like. This is about control from other people. And women deserve and should have the right to make these decisions for themselves with their doctors and not us.
Okay, sticking with Candidate Howard, question about DuPage County real estate taxes. Some people feel that the real estate taxes in DuPage County are among the highest in the country. How will you address the burdensome tax on homeowners?
Yeah, they are. I mean, I wish I could say they weren't, but we do have high taxes here in DuPage County. We also have high taxes in other counties across the state of Illinois. And some of the things that we actually have to do is take a look at what our tax bill is and what it does and what it means. The largest part of our tax bill go to our schools. And that means the funding and local control of the decisions that have been made here in our communities about what we think are important when it comes to our public schools. We need to make sure things are funded so that we can bring that tax burden down. This year we did property tax relief, and it may not seem like some people thought it was large enough, but it was something, and it's a start. One of the ways that we can do that are through things like pension consolidation, because that's an impact on our tax bill, which we've done, pension consolidation. Here with our local police and fire, we call it downstate, anything outside of Chicago. And so again, the opportunity to make sure that we are maximizing every opportunity that we have to leverage the dollars that we have in our districts, in our schools, in our villages, whether that's through grants, whether that's through different budgeting prospects, but we have to be able to address that. The best way to do it is, like I always say, we gotta pay the bills. We've gotta make sure that we are addressing the needs within our communities, and that's a real local control decision. Our villages, our schools, our libraries, depending on the towns you live in, our park district, those are decisions those boards are making. So that is the epitome of local control and what they decide to levy, and then how they use those dollars.
Okay, Candidate Hood, same question.
Say at the doors. I mean, it's unbelievable how high our property taxes are compared to the other states, and we are the second highest property taxes in the country. And it's making it home affordability very difficult, and it's something that a lot of people are leaving the state because of. They can go to another state, get a bigger house, and pay less property taxes. And so, it's a big issue that we have to address in Illinois, and it is mostly local, but we can do things at the state level. One of the things is these, sending unfunded mandates to local districts is causing a high increase in property taxes. One example is the Safety Act, which is going to be putting law enforcement required to put cameras. That's going to cost our district millions and millions of dollars, and that's going to come out of our property taxes. So, there's a lot of things that we can do. We need to pay down our pension debt, number one. We need pension reform because the more that we pay down our pension debt, the more property relief that we can have. We can then put more funding towards our schools from the state budget and provide some local relief to our property taxes. So it's definitely an issue that we have to address immediately because a lot of people are not able to remain in their homes just because they can't afford the property taxes.
Okay, sticking with candidate Hood, this question has to do with the climate. Illinois passed the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act in 2021, which sets Illinois on a path to be a leader in renewable energy. Please discuss whether you support CEJA and why or why not. Which aspects do you believe are most relevant for our district from both an economic and environmental perspective?
Yeah, I definitely support moving Illinois towards a path to clean energy. I mean, that is just the way of the future. But the way that I think CEJA approaches it, by putting mandates and these hard deadlines, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to reach those deadlines. So by 2050, we're supposed to be a 100% renewable energy. Right now, we're at about 11% renewable energy. So this is going to be very costly, and it's going to be difficult to achieve. We don't have the technology yet to get there. But I do believe, we are on a path, and I think this, is a good direction to be in, but I think we need to let the market determine those deadlines and gradually move in a more reliable, so that we don't face any, energy gaps that we're seeing, in California, but, move more in a reliable and affordable manner. I think we can achieve it. And just so you know, by 2050, that means no more gas stoves, no more, typical washer and dryers. It'll be all electric cars. And so, we'll get there eventually. I just don't think that the mandates and the deadlines are the way to do it.
Okay, candidate Howard, CEJA, your thoughts.
Sure. So I was a proud co-sponsor of CEJA. We have a very environmental district. I have a 100% record on environmental issues here, as well as the endorsement of the our Sierra Club. That means a lot to me because, again, this is a green district, and the environment is probably one of the top issues that people talk to me about at the doors. As it applies to our local municipalities, it's been really interesting to me to watch the changes. In fact, I believe it was an article just the other day, I think in the Daily Herald, about how our local government is actually hiring environmentalists and hiring individuals to help bring us to where we need to be on the environment. And that demonstrates to me that even, again, from a local perspective, we are recognizing the need to be environmentally conscious. That said, when I think about market-driven, that says big oil to me and gas companies. And they've already controlled the environment and what's gone on across the world. We're seeing that impact as we speak. And I don't think that's really the right way to go about it. I think you have to have deadlines so that people have a goal to achieve, so they know what they're working toward. It's important to have that because otherwise you don't know. There's no initiative. There's no reward to anyone if they don't have to do anything, right? They just sit back and let it happen. But by having goals and actual deadlines, we have to all work together to get there. I think it's been actually really exciting. I've learned a great deal about the environmental issues, and I think our local government, our municipalities are really moving toward green energy and what that's going to look like and what it can bring to our communities.
Okay, and candidate Howard, we're going to stay with environment. What role should the state play in ensuring citizens have safe water and clean air? What's the net economic impact to any changes that you would propose?
Well, it's interesting because, we all want clean water, safe air to breathe. But what we're finding is, again, depending on your zip code, you don't have that. One of the things that we know that we need to make sure that we're doing is the research. We need to make sure that we're partnering with the proper environmental groups who are studying these issues so that we have actual data, as we move toward clean water, clean air, again, the goals that we have in CEJA. I think what we do know is that we have waste that is causing a lot of problems in a lot of our neighborhoods. Maybe some people don't think so much here in Dupage County, but it's actually happening. We do have manufacturing in certain parts of the county, and so that does have a greater impact on the environment. And again, we want to make sure that everybody can breathe. We know that during COVID, we saw what the numbers were like when people were not out driving. The air quality was significantly better. And so we know that as we move toward cleaner energy, green energy, we're going to see a higher quality of air and water in our local communities.
Candidate Hood?
I just wanted to address the affordability aspect of CEJA and the impact that it's going to have on low-income and middle-income families who are already seeing high energy bills. And these goals that are in place are going to see even higher, and it's impacting Southern Illinois more because they have a different grid system and their energy costs are going to go even higher. In California, we saw energy costs 5 times as much as the average. And so I just want to stress that this will have an impact on our communities, and the affordability of it is something that we really have to consider when moving forward these goals and deadlines. And so, I agree with Terra Costa Howard. We should take a data-driven approach on clean air and clean water, and make sure that we have all stakeholders at the table, and make sure that the decisions that we make don't harm our communities, and in achieving these clean energy goals, which will benefit our communities in the long term.
Okay, sticking with Candidate Hood, now we're switching to immigration. What resources do you believe the state should provide to address current immigration challenges?
So, as a daughter of Cuban and Mexican immigrants, I fully appreciate and empathize with a person's desire to come to the United States for more opportunity and more freedoms. And a lot of the immigrants that are coming to our state and to our country are seeking just that. This is more of a federal issue, as we've seen open borders at our southern border, millions of people crossing over and coming to Illinois. And so in terms of asylum seekers, I believe Illinois has the resources to provide and help them and give them the appropriate resources that they need. But we're also seeing, an increase in drugs coming through the southern border. And I just read a report that enough fentanyl has come through our southern border to kill the entire United States. And so we just have to be cautious and make sure that we are protecting our communities and keeping each other safe. And, a bill that Terra Costa Howard sponsored, which was the Illinois Way Forward Act, prevents law enforcement from working with federal agents in handling this immigration problem. And so, I think we need to support our law enforcement and make sure our communities are safe, and separate, what's happening with the asylum seekers who are here legally, so that we can properly address the issue and keep our communities safe.
Candidate Howard?
Sure. So addressing our borders, and I don't just mean Indiana and Wisconsin, is really more of a federal issue. And the federal government needs to address what's happening regarding border control and such. But when they arrive here in Illinois, whether they've been trafficked from a governor from other states, or family members who are assisting others to come here, we here in Illinois welcome them with open arms because we believe that everyone deserves a chance. Regarding one of the most wonderful things about, and I'll say this part of my district, is when I was on the board, we know that we have these wonderful, amazing families who were brought here to us through World Relief. And they have provided an unbelievable experience and opened the hearts and homes of many, many people here in our community. It's really a beautiful thing. If anybody ever has a chance, I've been lucky to have that opportunity with the Glen Ellyn Children's Resource Center to meet a lot of these families and kids. And whether they were asylum seekers or they were here for different reasons, we welcome them in our community with open arms, and we do our very best to make sure that they have the services that they need here to do what they need to do to get a good education. And again, they enrich our communities. And these are things that are really important. When we talk about drugs coming from the southern borders, I always find that interesting because I love that study that was had, haven't seen that one. And what we do know is that as a member of the General Assembly, we have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in law enforcement to address these needs. When we talk about how to combat drugs in our community, we know that we're doing that.
Okay, and sticking with candidate Howard, this one has to do with term limits. Do you support term limits? If not, why not? If yes, what limit would you put on a state representative?
So I don't not support term limits because I think that what people really need to do is take a look at their lives and when they make these decisions. When I decided to run for office, I talked to my family about how long I would be willing to do this. And we made a decision as a family. What's been interesting to watch happen, though, is we have this conversation about term limits. We have those, they're called elections. And if anybody remembers, in 2018, I actually beat the incumbent, and that incumbent beat somebody else. And so that's how democracy works, is we get people out to vote, we hold ourselves accountable, and we do that. I remind people when we talk about term limits, let's make sure that we talk about term limits across the board. Because we've got a county board member who represents the 4th District. His name is Grant Eckhoff, and he's been there over 20 years. So if we're going to talk about term limits, let's talk about term limits. How about Jim Zay in the district next door? 20 years? 22 years he's been there. So let's talk about term limits across the board. People, we do need, Gwen Henry, another one. I'm trying. 16 years she's been there. So again, if you're going to talk about term limits, let's make sure that we're consistent about what that looks like. Because I do think fresh perspective and advice come with running for office. That's a really good thing. We want people to be there because you got to learn how the system works and where everything is and how to pass a bill. Those are things that are really important. But again, change is good. But when you have proven leadership like myself, and what I've done being an independent voice, I think that that's what my community, they rely on, and they believe that that's a really good thing.
Candidate Hood, do you support term limits?
Yes, I think limiting legislative term limits is a meaningful step towards eliminating corruption and inaction in the Illinois politics. We saw how long Mike Madigan was in office and how gerrymandered districts within our state keep those people in office. And so I think term limits are very important in eliminating corruption, which is Illinois is sort of unfortunately known for.
Okay, next question, staying with candidate Hood. Do you think it is necessary to ensure a worker's right to organize for wages and working conditions? Do you believe this requires amending the state constitution? Why or why not?
Yes, workers have the right to organize under federal law. I do not believe it needs to be in our Constitution. These rights already exist. Amendment 1, which will be on the ballot this November, is going to give organized government, organized union laborers unprecedented power that no other state has or experiences. And these rights are already protected. They do not need to be enshrined in our Constitution. What's going to happen is businesses which are already leaving or avoiding Illinois, this will give them another reason to leave. So I don't think it's good for our state, and I'm not going to be voting for it on November 8th. I think organized labor, the collective bargaining rights are already protected federally. And so this also prohibits the right to work, which other states are adopting, and that's where a lot of businesses are going, to those right to work states.
All right. Candidate Howard?
I do support the Workers' Rights Amendment, and let me be clear, the right to work is actually the right to freeload. And I think anybody who's a member of a union understands exactly what that means. That means that individuals don't pay into their union dues, they do not participate in the collective bargaining process, they let other people do that for them. They're freeloaders. And what my opponent doesn't remind everybody is that she actually sat on the board when the Janus case was decided and helped fund that. So anybody who believes in workers' rights, who believes in organized labor, knows that that case and what happened there has nothing to do with workers' rights. It has everything to do with freeloading. I do support it because you know what? Workers deserve the right to be protected. And I believe that this not only it strengthens our communities, this includes our first responders, the police that we all say we support. Let's show them that we support them by making sure that we agree with them, and our firefighters, our first responders, our nurses, the people in healthcare, backing them, showing that we support them, giving them the right to make sure that they can collectively bargain for the needs for them and their family. That's what supporting law enforcement. That's what it means to support our first responder. That's what it means to protect our teachers, to protect people in healthcare. That's what it means to protect a worker's rights.
Okay. Staying with candidate Howard, what is your position on Senate Bill 818, which updates sex education standards in K through 12 schools?
I support the teaching of sex education, comprehensive sex education in our schools. The bill also allowed for the school districts to opt out. It allows parents to opt out. And what we know is that the curriculum is still being worked on, that students deserve the right to understand at an age-appropriate level what is happening to their bodies, what different things mean. I think it's important that we have facts when we talk about this bill, because there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. So when we talk about age appropriateness, we should, again, I see many teachers in this room, we leave that in their hands, right? So we read books to kindergartners like, don't hug Doug. Doug does not like to be touched. That's the first step in teaching about consent. Making sure that kids understand no means no at a very early level. Games like freeze tag. Can't unfreeze somebody unless they give you permission to do so. We already do these things. I know when I was a catechist, I had to go through a training class, and we also had the children go through what safe touch means. So we're already doing this in many places in our communities. But what we know is teaching abstinence only in our high schools is frankly unrealistic. And so let's make sure kids actually have facts, that they can name their body parts accurately, that they understand at a young age what consent means. That is important.
Okay, candidate Hood, same question.
I don't believe that this is age-appropriate curriculum. It was rejected by all the schools in our district and most of the state. We are the only state that has adopted the national sex curriculum, and it teaches, gender ideology as early as kindergarten, hormone therapy. in grade school, masturbation in 3rd grade. I don't think this is appropriate for children, and I'm glad that our schools opted out of it.
Okay, staying with candidate Hood, I'm going to talk about public safety. The Illinois Safety Act is a broad bill. What do you believe are the strengths and weaknesses of the bill as it is currently written? What would you keep, modify, or eliminate?
I think there's a lot of things that I would change about the Safety Act. I'm opposed to it in its entirety, but I think that it could just use reform. It doesn't need a complete repeal. I am opposed to it along with 100 out of 102 state's attorneys and law enforcement. I think the most substantial and controversial part of the bill is the elimination of cash bail, which will go into effect January 1st of 2023. And the bill is unclear and contradictory in its terms, and what it's going to do is allow criminals back onto the streets. And there are certain parts of the bill that will allow violent criminals back on the streets. And there's portions of the bill that will prevent law enforcement from removing trespassers from private property and business property. So there's a lot of things that we need to change in this bill to maintain public safety. I think cameras on law enforcement is a good thing. There's some mental health portions of the bill that are great. But I think the biggest part of it is the end of cash bail. It's been tried in other states, such as New York, and we saw a big increase in crime. New Jersey has no cash bail, which Bob Berlin and Senator Curran said that we should probably try to emulate, because of the way that the bill is written right now, it eliminates judges' discretion to determine whether or not a person should be detained or not. And I think that is the part of the bill that I disagree with most.
Okay, candidate Howard.
So I actually am the only legislator out here who voted no. I voted no on the Safety Act, and I've spent a lot of time explaining what my vote meant. So let me explain it all to you. I voted no to the Safety Act. I received several hundred emails in my district in opposition, with maybe I think it was like 3 to 5 in support of. That's part of what being a legislator is listening to the people of your district. And there, as an attorney who has practiced out here in Dupage for 26 years, I understand how the Dupage system is going to work. My big concern is the upcharging, and that means charging somebody with a higher crime so that you could hold them. There's a number of inconsistencies in the bill from statute to statute that are absolutely have to be clarified. They're not, whether they're Scrivener's errors or not, it doesn't matter. It's a huge piece of clarity that needs to occur prior to January 1. And I think it's really important. We have to do that. The House passed a bill, we passed 3 trailers, I think it is, since the bill was passed 2 years ago. And each time I before I took that vote, I called the state's attorney and my local police chiefs to kind of get a better understanding where they were. And then when they were in support of it, when they were neutral, I voted for the trailer bills. I actually helped work on those issues with the bill sponsors. Right now, we have a cash bail system that is based on how much money you have in your bank account. That has nothing to do with safety. In fact, the Daily Herald actually had an article, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, that talked about a man who was charged with, I think, 2 counts of criminal sexual abuse, who posted $30,000 and was out. I think we'd all in this room agree that person should have stayed locked up. But that's not what happened. So, I'm stopping.
All right. Candidate Howard, and this is going to be our final question tonight. What would you consider effective ethics reform legislation?
Well, ethics reform is an interesting topic because, 1, how do we define ethics? And 2, many of the things that people talk about reforming or use as examples are in fact criminal and illegal. You have people who've been indicted who potentially committed criminal acts. So there's not an ethics law out there that would actually be able to change criminal behavior. That said, I think one of the main things that we need to do is to talk about the various offices that people hold. We have several members of the General Assembly who are elected to multiple offices, and then they sit on these committees. They have backgrounds, not even backgrounds, active participation, representing drug companies, and then they take votes on bills regarding prescription drugs. That to me crosses the line. Recuse yourself from those votes. We need to make sure that when we're looking at the financial disclosures, that we're being honest about what it is that we're disclosing and why we are asking for that type of information. I think the legislator or inspector general should have more authority to investigate things that they, or she believes, or excuse me, now he believes, that need to happen, but then we need to take a step back and let them do their jobs. We have passed meaningful ethics reform. We have changed our disclosures. We have multiple trainings that we have to go through, and I support ethics changes. I mean, let's have that conversation about what we really need to do to change someone's behavior.
Okay, Candidate Hood.
I think Illinois definitely needs some meaningful ethics reform to eliminate this culture of corruption in Illinois and maintain the standards of transparency, accountability, and fairness within our government. Term limits is one thing I previously mentioned, but also fair maps. We just passed a map, the Democrats, I should say, passed a map. They redrew districts behind closed doors without any transparency or public comment. Terra Costa Howard supported these very heavily partisan gerrymandered maps. And I think that in order to have fair maps, we need an independent commission to come in and draw these in a nonpartisan manner. So that we have fair districts and a representation of our diverse communities. Empowering the legislator general is another thing that we mentioned. Lobbying restrictions, we need to stop this revolving door between legislators and lobbyers. I think that leads to a lot of the special interest issues that we see. And also conflict of interest form. There needs to be stricter conflict of interest rules so that lawmakers don't privately benefit from their legislative dealings. They don't pass laws that benefit them in their personal lives and professions. So I think there's a lot we can do to maintain ethics reform here in Illinois.
Okay, and that concludes our question and answer part of the forum. We've had the candidates answer 16 questions, so nice job.
Felt like it.
And now we get to listen to closing statements, and each candidate does have 2 minutes, and we'll begin with Candidate Hood.
I just really want to say that I care so much about this community, and the reason I'm running for state representative is because I want to continue to stay and live in here in Illinois. And if when I go to Springfield, I will make sure that everything I do will be for our communities, for our people, for our taxpayers. I will work hard to make sure that we can be a fiscally responsible and disciplined state. I will make sure that we have safe communities and that our families and children feel protected no matter where they are. And I want to improve our education. Right now we have 2/3 of children do not read or perform math at grade level, and I think that's a travesty to our children here in Illinois. And I just wanted to mention that in some school districts there's low and income and minority children that are trapped in failing school districts because they can't afford education outside of their public education. So I support alternatives for those children. There's the Invest in Kids Act, which I support in continuing and making it permanent here in Illinois. It's given scholarships to thousands of low-income Black and minority children. And I just think that gives them access to a better future. It gives them a pathway to opportunity. And it gives them a life outside of crime and poverty, which we're seeing, that's one way that we can prevent crime, is giving people opportunities, both economic and educational. So I will work hard to do all those things and make Illinois a prosperous, vibrant, affordable, and safe place to live.
Okay. Candidate Howard, your closing statement.
Thank you. I'd like to just correct a few things. First of all, regarding fair maps, I was actually the sponsor of the fair map amendment in the House, and we worked with the League of Women Voters, and then COVID happened. So I do believe that we would have had that, we would have had a hearing on that, and things did not go on behind closed doors. There were hearings about the maps for quite some time that were open to the public, and as many of you know, I used my district office to promote attending and participating in those, knocking doors and publicizing those events. Regarding revolving door, we've already worked on that in terms of ethics reform. We have gun laws on the books and they are being enforced, but when you went 736 days with your friend Bruce Browner, we lost all of these things. And so we need to go backwards and now fix that because of what happened with you and your friends. We've had fear-mongering going on around here for many months, and which you participated in by hosting these fear-mongering road shows, telling people that the police were not going to show up. That's a lie. They are going to show up, and they are going to keep our neighbors safe, and they are going to keep us all safe, and they are going to address the issues that they're here to do. I got to tell you, people ask me why I do this job because I listen to the heckling and the lies and things that people may say, and I do this because I knocked on a door and talked to a mom who has a severely disabled daughter. Her name is Kate. And I looked into Kate's eyes and I listened to what this family needed and the changes that they needed in special education. And I listened to them and I made the phone calls and we're trying to help them get the services. That's just Kate's families. I do this every day. I knock every door, over 12,000 doors between May and August, because I care about this community. And I have said that since the day I moved here in 1997. And I will continue to do that and show my independent voice here every day in the General Assembly as your state representative.
And thank you. And on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Glen Ellyn, I'd like to thank the candidates for their participation, thank the audience for coming out tonight for their civic engagement. I encourage you to go to the League of Women Voters Glen Ellyn, lwvge.org website for the recording of tonight's forum for the Illinois House Representative District 42. Please encourage your friends and neighbors to also watch the video. I wish you all a good evening and good luck to the candidates.